All right. Well, I got some more thoughts that are coming out of my head. I'll just be honest with you where I heard it. I'm just basically continuing on from their point. But I was listening to the People's Square. Yes, yes, yes. When you research that name, yes. Eric Stryker and Borzoi. I know. Anyway, that was an interesting idea. They were talking about masculinity and heroes. And they're talking more about the idea of, how different philosophers change things a bit. They were talking about Camus a little bit, this and that. I don't know too much about Camus and all this type of thing with Milton Friedman. That's a little too big brain for me. But what I will say is they started to talk about people like Eminem, and of course, yeah, me being the millennial that I am, of course, Eminem. I mean, it's something we can't get. Yeah, I can't get that out of my head. I can remember, just being at home and I would just put on the CD player and there, Marshall Mathers LP. There you go. So that's where I memorized those lyrics and hearing the flow of it and everything else. And so, that's where the mimicry came from. But I thought about this. And there's a fine line between what society or what the state or whichever you want to say allows certain heroes to come out as a form of control. And then they eventually sell out in some way. You think about it like with people like Eminem, who started out and it's just like, I just don't give a fuck. And, just the two of us. And when we ride, and all those type of songs. And then making the shift and making more songs like, and when I'm gone, don't mourn, yeah. And making songs like, Just Lose It and everything else, which became much more cartoonish and much more just repackaged feijoa, But, you think about it, it's the same thing with movies as well. Yeah, they were talking about James Bond. And of course, I mean, in reality, if you learn about the real history of those books and how elitist people like James Bond were, it's like, yeah, I mean, to a point, I found it, I was like, oh man, that dude's just, smashing chicks left and right. But it's like, what does he have to show for it, But it's interesting to think about. Are they really, can we claim ownership of any of these types of things? I mean, there are obviously folk heroes. You'll get into like, people like, I don't know, maybe Johnny Appleseed. I mean, that's maybe not the right type of thing, but there are various folk heroes I can't think of, or ones that have been created by the state. People like, the movie Hans Westmar that was used by the Nazis, and of course, this guy was shot supposedly by communists and everything else, but they turned. And Hans, what was the real guy's name? I can't think of it now. I'm trying to think of it now. It's gonna bug the hell out of me. Horst Wessel. There you go, Horst Wessel. And they made this image of him and they deified him. Of course, the song, Define the Hulk. And et cetera, et cetera. But are those really your people? Are they really people that you want to focus on? And of course, I mean, this is something that's brought up in hip hop as well. It's like this idea, of course, that don't ever let me tell you, don't ever let me hear you say that you want to grow to be just like me. Of course, even people like Eminem and Ice Cube, I think about that as well. That, Ice Cube was like, do I look like a motherfucking role model? Or I ain't the one. And of course, he's talking about women and, marrying them or whatever, but that's a whole different thing. But the same thing with Eminem. Don't you want to grow up to be just like me? And it's interesting to think about the ideas of how masculinity can be seen in the present day and everything else. And like I said, once again, that kind of sounds like I'm going SJW here, but I think it's interesting to think about. And, ultimately, everyone makes up their own minds on what masculinity could mean. There are generally accepted It's kind of like GAP, generally accepted accounting principles, but there are generally accepted ideas on what masculinity is, and it's outside of lefty circles, or outside of academia, outside of the sociological ideas. There's some general ideas on what makes a man, this type of thing. And I can still listen to Marshall Mathers LP, or I could still listen to that and not be a crazy guy, but I think that that's always going to be in me. That sense that when Eminem said, my words are like a dagger with a jagged edge. I stab you in the head, whether you're a fag or les, a homosex, a math, or a trans or vest, pants or dress. Hate fags, the answer's yes. Homophobic? Nah, you're just heterophobic. Staring at my G's, watching my genitals bulging. That's my motherfucking balls. You better let go of them. They belong in my scrotum. You'll never get hold of them, etc. I remember too, there was a friend I had, and we, be like, oh yeah, I shaved my... like what Eminem said, if I ever gave a fuck, I'd shave my nuts, tuck my dick in between my legs, and cluck. And of course, you get the... for me, it's a tall glass of nostalgia. It's a tall glass of reminiscing. It's a tall glass of... At least it gives you that sense of, I don't give a fuck sort of attitude, And that's, it's something that you can at least go to in a controlled sense. Dare I say it, it's like, but that's the whole thing. Even if you look deeper on it and a more psychological issue, the idea of, this hardcore hip hop, whether it's MOP, whether it's Ice Cube or Eminem or, I don't know, Icy, Insane Clown Posse, or whichever, Tech Nine or whatever. And that it's listened to by white kids who live in the suburbs, who don't have to deal with the projects. They're listening to Mobb Deep talk about, hit with a 2 to 4, it's difficult. I don't know anything about that. Most white kids don't know about that. But it's something that you sound like, and you're getting the info of it, and you're inadvertently trying to take that persona on. Even if it's just in your head temporarily. But that's what you do to live in the fantasy compared to how you actually live life. You see what I'm saying? Gang checking in. Okay. Thank you. You are checked in. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit too boomer. But yeah, that's kind of my idea of it. Is it, people live through the fantasy of it. And it's like, for me, I'm old enough now where I consciously understand it. It's like, when I see a little kid go by, it's like, okay, when I'm listening to, Cold as Ice or something like that, when I hear, I like to welcome motherfuckers to the back. It's like, okay, I'm going to turn it down when I go past the kid. All right, when I go past that kid, all right, now turn it back up. So I try to be a little bit more responsible with it. But it's ultimately just that sense of connection. It's my only real connection to the past in a lot of ways. I could say the same thing with Kung Fu movies too, to a point, but that's a different thing. It's like, once again, I've rationalized that in a certain way where it's just like, these are, a lot of the time that was done by stuntmen. A lot of the time that was like stuntmen like Yuen Wah, who is Jackie Chan's, I'm trying to think, brother, but in a theater sense, in the Chinese opera sense, because they were all Seven Little Fortunes. Same thing with Yuen Bun. Both Yuen Wah, Yuen Bun, and Yuen Tak were all choreographers and stuntmen at Shaw Brothers. So, but they still grew up with Jackie Chan and everything else, and still there was that connection. Obviously, Yuen Wah continued to work with Jackie in the 80s and 90s and everything else. Yeah. Bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks. Exactly, yeah. Lick on these nuts and suck the dick. Get the fuck out and then you're done. Abs I hops in my stomach, a quick run. Yeah, something like that. I can't remember the lyrics to that song. But yeah, I would say it's a different type of thing. It's like, yeah, you can get the same thing with rock as well. It's like Guns N' Roses or, Limp Bizkit to a point. And I know that's rap rock, I know, but it's like, or even, what is it? Chop Suey. I'm trying to think of the name of the group. The Chop Suey. Let me type in that. SUEY. System of a Down. There we go. System of a Down. And of course, wake up, the makeup, or whatever the case may be, it connects you to that. And it's the way that's how a lot of folks see masculinity. It's different from the time of, you got to go out and hunt for your food, this and that, or you got to trap something. I mean, trapping, I know trapping has a different, different connotations, but actual trapping, trapping an animal, was probably the more realistic way than wasting all day chasing down a deer to get food. I mean, more realistically, you get, you just set up traps and you catch small game and, you make squirrel stew or whatever the case may be. That's a more realistic, practical way. But, the image of a man, it's still the image today where, a man will go out there with the most precision bolt action rifle or a big, nice bow. And, oh, yeah, well, I'm doing this to, it's like, no, you're doing it to go out. Basically, you're going out there to, get away from the wife and kids. Basically, same thing with fishing. You want to, leave the wife or whatever and, go out and get drunk and, I don't know, all sorts of shit may go on. But it's like, that's a whole different story. I'm just saying is that it's interesting, of course, how masculinity changes in time. And, of course, people in a lot of ways, maybe consider emasculated. But, nowadays, of course, everyone's more open about their feelings and everything else. At least, that's the thought. And, we're just kind of stuck in that time, Yeah. Kissinger told Mao that power was the ultimate aphrodisiac, same energy. Yeah. I heard that, Kissinger definitely laid the pipe on some actresses, this and that. Oh, yeah, of course. I remember, back when I was, like, trying to study more about PUAs, pickup artists, and everything else. There's this one article, this is like this ugly dude or whatever supposedly went up there and, was making this speech or whatever, and, women were just begging for his number and whatnot, but he, well, that's the whole thing. It's like, once you get older, it's like, I'll give y'all some more insight into my psyche. If for nothing else, then at least someone else will know. But it's like, there's the idea of me, like, once, the Civil War came in this country, I thought about it. It was like this idea where it's like, you be banging women on the road, this and that, but more realistically, at least in my view, is that for a lot of dudes getting older, is that they've already got baby mamas. And for me, that will probably be the case, is that, I may have one baby mama out here with a kid, and then I'd have another baby mama somewhere else. Be like one white baby mama and like one Puerto Rican baby mama or something like, just, that's kind of how my mind works. So it's like when women try to come on to me or something like that, it's like, no, I got two baby mamas. I'm not worried about trying to find a third one. I'm paying my money or whatever the case may be. And that's more the reality that we live in today. People have baby mamas. They don't have wives. They don't have GFs. But it's like, that's the more realistic way. We change our perceptions of things. That's the same thing with movies, is that, like I say, with James Bond was that one guy that they were still trying to keep the same way. Of course, Pierce Brosnan, with GoldenEye. That's another thing, too. It's like, gamers, that's another aspect as well. But I'm not much of a gamer. It's like, GoldenEye 64, maybe a little bit of Mario. It's like Nintendo 64. PS2 was the end for me. Yeah, PS2 was the end for me in terms of gaming. So I was just like, now I just play Close Combat 3, the Russian Front, on the old laptop here when I ever get the chance. I do have some old videos about that. Who cares? I mean, that guy Tick, the Lolbert, who does the history videos, he did Close Combat 3 as well. I'm going super boomer, but it's like, at the end of the day, man, it's like, in terms of masculinity, describe it your own way. It's like for men, that image has changed. You can't just be the dude that's, just banging chicks left and right. It's like, those folks still exist, but it's like, at the end of the day, the dude that's banging chicks all day is either going to catch something or they're going to eventually have all these kids that he's got to take care of. You see what I'm saying? Or that, baby mom's going to be calling him saying, my cousin's going to come here and he's going to make sure he's going to handle you if you get the, you don't bring that check, whatever the case may be. You see what I'm saying? So that's the realities that we live in today. So it's a whole different, like I say, basically, I kind of went way off the bend here. But basically, these heroes, people like James Bond or people like Eminem or these other folks, where they ever really are heroes or even folk heroes, whether that's the guy who helped start the Rangers. I'm trying to think of who it was. What is it? Army Rangers. I'm really trying to think about it now. I think that comes from. Oh, nah, I don't want that. I want Wiki. There we go. What the hell was his name? And I want to say this is more of a thing, but let me see here. Benjamin Church. There's like a Henry guy or something, but I guess it was Henry Church. But I know that they were the earliest Rogers Rangers. That's it. Yeah, Major Robert Rogers. There we go. Yeah, was who organized 9 Ranger companies, and he was the one that actually came up with the first rules of the United States Army Rangers. But it's like he could be seen as a folk hero. That's the guy I was thinking of. It's the same type of thing in China with they probably aren't the best role models. Yeah, exactly, man. That's the same thing with like Nino Brown in movies like. But that's the early days, though, and that's what shaped a lot of people. Yeah, whether it's Nino Brown or whether even if it's real life people, it's like in like New York, for example, you hear about rappers from that time, they'll be talking about people like Pappy Mason, or they'll talk about they'll even you'll get into people like even from the the 50s and 60s, people like Bumpy Johnson, or even of course Malcolm X, he used to be a hustler. He was robbing folks, he was robbing people's houses up in Boston, and it's a whole different type of thing. I eventually I'll get around to reading autobiography of Malcolm X, but it's a question of are these folk heroes really ours? And it's like, to me, the folk heroes and other folks that may influence what masculinity stands for, those things change over time. So yeah, you can look at the Spartans of 300 or something like that, but that doesn't represent today. It's the same thing with folks like talking about Horst Wessel, the guy who was killed by the communists. It's like, that represents that time. The same thing even with Eminem, or same thing with people like that. They represent their time. And so it just, it kind of evolves from there. I mean, that's my opinion on it. That's my take on it, and it evolves in time. I think that's all I really have to say. I mean, in terms of masculinity as well, in terms of that, it's like everybody kind of, it changes over time. It's like now you have the boomers who, they may have like John Wayne, this and that, but of course now they have to denounce them. And I don't know who the hell their heroes are, but, they get older and they, they're doing, they may be just, they're going to the YMCA and lifting weights, and they're, maybe they're idolizing the ESPN, the young dudes that are, playing football and whatnot. Yeah. More like modern day minstrels, maybe not so much heroes. Yeah. That's true. I can go with that. Yeah, I think you're right on that, Glass now. Yeah, I mean, it just depends on how people see it. I'm just drowning right now, basically, in stuff that I really shouldn't be talking about. But guess what I'm doing? I'm like, I'm drowning in my own ignorance. But I started with talking about Eminem, which I can give some account of talking about, because I can say I grew up in that time. But talking about other stuff, maybe I'm not in the same wheelhouse as, but I don't know, man. But I would say is that, masculinity represents the time that it was, and that folk heroes, ultimately, they don't necessarily belong to you. They fit into a narrative to make you violent when society needs you to. You see what I'm saying? It's just, that's just the way it goes. It's like, so we portray police officers as heroes when we need to. And of course, that narrative still exists to a point, but of course that's changing. Now, of course, we've seen some folks try to make George Floyd into a saint. Now, of course, that's a whole different issue about masculinity, this and that. And they're not going to bring up his real story, And that's another issue too. This is my last mention here. I'm getting more like Andy Rooney, the guy that was on the old boomer that was on CBS. Well, things used to be this way, and but anyway, but it's like that where, once you look at the real story of folks like that, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. Yeah, same thing with people like Nino Brown. Even that guy, I mean, he was a coward. He used children as shields. He tricked people into doing business for him, this and that. So yeah, I mean, he was ultimately a coward. I mean, even the same type of thing with people like Pablo Escobar. He went and hid out, and he was just eating spaghetti, and suddenly Los Pepes got him. But in a way, I did it just to dab on the lefties who have their own idols and their own heroes. They deify people like Stalin, this and that. And you can feel as you want to about Stalin. I'm not going to sit here and debate it. You can think what you want. But it's the same type of thing. It's like, especially then, if they met him in real life, they wouldn't like him. He doesn't represent our time, I think with that, I think I've said my fill once again. I've just been making these videos just, it's kind of like that joke. It's like, it's like we don't have to know every single fucking thing that you think in your head, but it's like, and probably, in the coming weeks, I won't be doing that, but I figure I'll at least give my views on things and at least get it known. Like I say, I treat this like a diary. That's probably not the right way to look at it, but that's how I see it in some ways. So, and there you go. I think that's all I really have to say. Is there anything that anyone else wants to say? Be like, you want me to comment on something? You want me to, talk about something or whatever the case may be? It's like we've been, it's like I've talked about Chaz. Chaz is still hanging on. Now it's just coming down to the, I said Chaz is over. Even though I think at the end of that video I said that they were, going to try to take it down. We see that ultimately the barriers are still up, folks are still there, but a lot of the hangers on are gone. Now it's just down to these few people, and even them, they're pussies. Talking about reduce the budget of the Seattle Police Department by 50%. Give money to black communities. It's like you live in Seattle. How many brothers are up in Seattle? Let's be honest. It's like in reality, what percentage of brothers are living in Seattle? I'm sorry, not many brothers are living in Seattle. I mean, at least that's my view. I mean, let me take a look. Let me take a look at rough stats here. Some rough stats. Population of Seattle. Population of Seattle. Let's see here. Okay. Seattle, okay, 744, 990, 955. Let me see here. I'm just curious. What's the demographics? Demographics of Seattle. Let me see here. Oh, 7% black. Oh, shit. Okay, well, I'm bugging then. But still, I mean, 7%. I mean, there's more, once again, 14.1% Asian. Because, yeah, I mean, obviously it's near to, it's right there, next to, across the Pacific Ocean. So it's like, of course, that's going to be kind of the issue, But yeah, man, it's like 7% of the population is black in Seattle. It's just, but once again, it's a whole different type of thing, But I think I've pretty much said my piece. I really do. I think I've said my piece on it. Like I say, I think I'll finally get my ass in gear. That's more than I thought. I think, like I said, I think I'll get my ass in gear though and record some more videos for Revolt of the Elites. I'll get through that book. So far, like I say, they were talking about that book on the People's Square, and I do have it, so I'm going to read through that now. I don't know how many videos it's going to take. It'll probably take at least 6 or 7. I don't know. I'll see how far I can get. Usually I get through at least 2 chapters a video. That's what I try to do. I aim for that. And so I'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. I think, like I say, let me get out of this room. It's hot as hell in here. Hold on. Give me a minute, folks. There we go. Okay. Ooh, there we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. I think that's all. That's pretty much all I have to say. Really, is just we see what's changing. Masculinity evolves with the time. Same thing with heroes. And yeah. And some of those folks probably aren't the best role models, but that's what society tries to present. So I think that's the way it goes. Like I say, I think I've said my piece. I went on all sorts of different tangents, but I wanted to talk about this for a minute. Let me talk about this while I have y'all here, while I have two people. I do think that I think Glassner was saying this in his video, talking about I was a little bit black pilled, and then that's true. But I think I still have the positivity enough that we're gonna make it somehow, some way. Somehow, some way, we're gonna do it. Nobody knows how, and everyone can LARP about what it is, and LARP does hold its value. It does, but it's just you got to back it up with something. LARPing and bluffing, I think there are overlaps. It's not completely the same thing, but I think LARPing and bluffing do have some points. And so I think that needs to be realized. And I think that, right now, it's not doing well in terms of the economy, this and that, but I think that, the individual people, we're still here. We're not defined by America. We're not defined by the traditional ideas of it. We're defined by what's around us. Dare I say it? I mean, maybe I'm getting a little bit too Marxist-Leninist here, but we're defined by what's around us, by what we have. Not just materially, but also mentally. And we have that ability to adapt. We have that ability to change our horizons. Expand our horizons. And I think that as time goes on, I think as much as I deeply feel that some things don't change, is that there will be change that does happen. And I think the dog is going to be coming in. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Y'all have a good night, though. See you later. Bye-bye.